Welcome back to the Overthinking Podcast, where we take all the fitness, nutrition, and lifestyle chaos in your brain and help you make actual sense of it. Today, we're diving into a topic that is absolutely essential if you want to see real progress in the gym and want to understand how consistently challenging your body is the key to getting stronger, building muscle, and avoiding plateaus.
All right, but let's be real. Everyone wants to look stronger and look like they train as hard as they do. But what is the secret sauce to making that happen? Do you have to add weight every week? Do you need to switch the movements up constantly? Are you even making progress if the scale isn't moving? It's frustrating to feel like you're doing everything you can, but still not seeing the changes in your body composition you desperately want to see.
So today we're breaking down what progressive overload is, aka the secret sauce to building muscle, getting stronger, and making sure your hard work in the gym actually shows. We're talking about how to know if you're making progress, why consistency beats chaos, and how to structure a training session that actually gets you the results you want.
Plus, we'll walk you through how to design a killer glute day. And because who doesn't want to have a strong, juicy booty that look like Kelsey's?
Let's get into it.
But first, we're going to play our favorite little game. And we have a little spin on it for you today.
It's not this or that today.
It's going to be a fuck, marry, kill, a tale as old as time. And today, we're going to decide between fuck, marry, kill of Bulgarian split squats or rear foot elevated split squats, hip thrusts, any kind, barbell, glute drive machine, whatever, and kickbacks. Any variation of kickback, any range of motion you want. Kelsey, what would you choose?
I feel like I don't even have to think about this. Like, I'm in my Bulgarian split squat era. I'm like everybody, they've been the bane of my existence throughout the course of time. But I've only recently really enjoyed pushing them, and I'm up to like 50-pound dumbbells or 175-pound dumbbell as I'm doing them, and that feels like really exciting. So I think I'm gonna marry Bulgarian split squats. I'm gonna kill off hip thrusts, and I'll fuck with some kickbacks for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a more applicable approach to a longevity approach, right? Like if I really wanted to turn this long back that I have into a juicy booty and keep that juicy booty for a long time, I think I would definitely have to marry split squats.
Okay.
Like from a longevity perspective, split squats are the GOAT when it comes to resiliency and life demands and mobility over long term. From is this the best for building my glutes? I still think it's up there. Yeah. But I think it also transfers to other things. So that's my marry. I would fuck a hip thrust.
Okay.
Okay, because it just feels right. Right, you're thrusting. I also feel like this is going to be the toxic relationship that I know that I should stay away from.
Yeah.
But I want it.
You're like, this kind of hurts my body, but also I love hip thrusting 500 pounds.
Yeah. Kind of a little low risk, honestly. Hip thrust is like one of like the quote unquote safer movements relative to if you're doing it right. And then lastly, cable kickbacks. I would absolutely kill them. This is the one thing that my specific glutes need the most, but I hate doing them. I'm like very extension intolerant, like I have back pain. So if I'm not doing kickbacks right, it just messes me up.
Yeah. Do you think that means that you should do them more if you hate them?
That's exactly what I'm saying. And therefore I will kill them.
That was how I felt about Bulgarian split squats. So I was like, I hate these. I'm going to refuse them for 10 years. And then within the last year or so, I'm like, fine, I'll just find ways to enjoy it, whether it's with a Smith machine or now I'm really enjoying dumbbells again.
Yep.
Setup really matters. Like
I was going to say versatility really matters too.
Yes. That's the reason I hate hip thrusts is I fucking hate setting up a barbell. It's so much goddamn work that I'm exhausted by the time I need to go actually do the hip thrust at 315.
I don't want to have to carry multiple 45-pound plates from wherever the heck they're stored.
No.
Put them on the barbell, have to like raise up the barbell. I love a hip thrust machine.
Yes.
I do think most people should start with a barbell. Yeah. Because you need to know like the stability and the core demand that's needed to do an effective injury free, like low risk of injury for a hip thrust.
And I think with a machine, I don't feel it in my glutes as much. And that might be like just specific to me. I just always feel more connected when I do a barbell hip thrust with like a free standing barbell compared to a machine.
And the thing that I've recently started doing a little bit more personal training in the last year, which was something I hadn't done in a long time, remote coaching for a while. And I had a client who just could not feel her glutes and hip thrust.
With a machine or with a barbell?
Anything. And there was something very specific that I gave her. I told her, like, think of a grandma butt, right?
Yeah.
Opposite of Kim Kardashian, where you're like sticking your butt out. Think about like tucking your pelvis under and engaging like that lowest ab that you have.
Yeah.
When you try to lift the bar with that lowest ab, like you're thrusting into the bar or into the bench, or the pad, that's the change. And so
I always like to say, pretend like your husband, boyfriend, partner, whatever, comes up behind you and spanks your butt. You're gonna go and like squish your tush.
That's a great
to like protect
cue.
your butt. You're like, ooh.
Yes.
Squish your butt. Not squish your bush. Squish your butt.
Squish your bush. We're a bush accepting group also.
We're going off the rails, but let's get back to our topic, which is progressive overload. What progressive overload means is the gradual increase of stress placed on your body during training to drive adaptations like muscle growth, strength, or endurance, or in a lot of people's cases, quote unquote, tone, which is like changing the ratio from muscle to fat, or fat to muscle, etc.
Right. And why this matters, because without it, training becomes very stagnant, results can plateau. And a lot of people think that progressive overload is like, oh, I have to lift more each week. But as a trained athlete, there's a certain level that you get to where it's like, you don't just increase your loads every week. Like sometimes it takes weeks, months, years
Think
to
about
get
a lateral
new PR.
raise, right? Think about a lateral raise. Like you start at 5 pounds, you eventually make up to 8 pounds, eventually you're at 10 pounds. It's going to be a long ass time before you get to 15. Like how do you progress that lateral raise using other metrics besides just adding more weight? Because eventually you're not going to be able to do more.
And reps matter here too. Like if you're going to do lateral raise for 5 reps, sure, I can pick up the 15s or the 20s. Maybe, but that's also a reason why changing your programming and your reps every single week is not going to achieve progressive overload. So common misconceptions, one, that you have to lift heavier weights all the time, and that is actually one of the things that I think people create pressure and come off their plan, is because it's like, oh no, if I can't progressively overload this week, then I must not be getting stronger, I must not be getting better. But the research shows, and there is a National Strength and Conditioning study that showed that progressive overload is essential for increasing both strength and hypertrophy. And hypertrophy is what Kelsey was talking about equating to the toned look that everybody wants. That emphasizing adaptations can only occur when you're continuously doing this progressive overload and challenging the muscles. So if you've been doing the same weights and reps and exercises for a month and wondering why you look the same, this is why. And
I also want to insert a point here that looking stronger or building muscle doesn't always equate to being stronger. If we look at like world-class bodybuilders, right? Like they might be strong, but compared to a really elite power lifter who might be someone like my size, like I'm not saying I'm a high excelling power lifter, but there are girls who are smaller than me, like 114 pounds, who are deadlifting 400 pounds that would, probably not work out for a girl in bikini of the same stature. Like someone might look strong, but may not actually like have the same strength. So it all comes down to different training mechanics and how we apply progressive overload in your program.
Right. And if you're somebody who is listening to this episode, like, yeah, I want to look good naked, that is important to me. Maybe relevant, but irrelevant to your actual strength numbers. This is where muscle growth equals looking stronger. And that's how you achieve that toned look, is to train for hypertrophy, for increasing muscle mass. When we train for strength, all we care about is that weight that's on the bar. And that is they're both for performance. One is more of like an aesthetics focus and one is more of an absolute strength focus. But we do need both. And we will get into that later on.
And I think that comes back to like the intention you put behind your programming. Like for the general population, we want to train all aspects of rep ranges. So if we have, for example, like a 1 to 3 rep range, most people probably aren't going to be training in that zone. And that's where like the power lifters start training closer to meet time. You train those 1 rep maxes, you train an over max so you can try to like build your adaptations up for competition. Most people probably aren't training in that or shouldn't be training in that, at least not all the time. We are going to use a large range of rep ranges so we can accommodate all different training avenues. So you have like 4 to 6 ranges, you have 8 to 10, you have 12 to 15, sometimes upwards of 20. We want to utilize all of those things so that you're a well-rounded athlete And you're not just overexhausting yourself by training 1 to 3 reps all the time.
And if you talk to some more dogmatic bodybuilding coaches, they'll say, 8 to 12 reps is the hypertrophy range.
But how boring is that?
And also, how accurate is that? You can absolutely achieve hypertrophy doing 5 reps.
For sure.
Especially if you're progressively overloading and especially if you're hitting close to failure.
Yeah.
And that's where I think people do get stuck in the social media kind of blubber, is that if you want to get strong, or if you want to get toned, still train as if you want to get stronger, because you have to attach a performance focus to a body recomposition plan.
For sure.
In a study of the International Journal of Sports Medicine, Exercise Metabolism, 2014, found that those who applied progressive overload following a structured nutrition plan also saw better muscle definition than those who trained without progressive overload. So you don't necessarily need to bulk and cut dramatically, but you do need to make sure you're, one, getting enough protein, getting enough calories, probably in a recomp phase, but training with progressive overload while eating at around maintenance or a slight deficit or a slight surplus helps you manage gaining that muscle without, gaining excess body fat.
Right.
Or not giving your body enough fuel that you can't gain the muscle that you're desperately trying to gain.
Right. Which is where we all want to be, and that's kind of that freedom, sustainability place where we all want to be, and where we try to get our clients to approach their healthy lifestyles from.
Yeah.
So in sum, progressive overload basically just ensures that you're actually building muscle and not just going to the gym. So how do we actually apply progressive overload?
Well, one of the biggest myths is that you have, like we talked about, is that you have to add weight every session. But instead, progressive overload actually works through a few different progression methods. And here are the top 5 that I typically encourage my clients to look at. So 1, yes, of course, you can increase weight. So week 1, it's 50 pounds. Week 2, it's 55 pounds, yada, yada. Another option is if we increase the reps or sets. So if you're someone who's just getting into training, I might start you on a lower rep scheme, say, hey, find something tough for this amount of reps. And then for the next 8 weeks, keep that same weight, and I just want to see how many more reps you can do.
Yep. I love to utilize AMRAP sets towards the end of someone's program in order to gauge, because we use, we'll touch on autoregulation at another point. We use autoregulation or RPE, which we've mentioned in another episode, but we will do a bigger episode on. But our AMRAP, or as many reps as possible, is a way to kind of determine what the true RPE might be. So on a scale of 1 to 10, if I'm giving someone an AMRAP, say lateral raise, you're trying to increase your weight, right? You've been stuck at the 8 pounds for, 16 weeks now. So 4 months. I'm going to have someone probably at the end of that doing 1 or 2 AMRAP sets, maybe even increasing the AMRAP sets. So you're increasing the volume at the same weight in hopes to, when we circle back to a heavier set of lateral raise, do the 10s, but for less reps. I know we're getting a little confusing here, but...
Yeah, these are just a couple of different options of how you can, progressive overload, again, is not just weight. So then number 3, you touched on this, but RPE increases, I consider a progressive overload technique, especially for clients who don't take big week deloads after each cycle. Mm-hmm. So when you finish your last, your 6th week of your cycle, you go into the next week, I give them a week 0. So I drop their RPE way down to a 6 or a 7.
Yep.
And it's the exact same program that they're going to see in week 1 of their new build. So it gives them an opportunity to kind of breathe and lower the RPE, lower the pressure a bit. But then we ramp them back up. Week 1.
It also is a way to accommodate the fatigue that you've built up over 4 or 5 weeks now. If you're following a similar program, it accommodates the fatigue, because you're obviously, if you're training harder week to week, you're going to accumulate more fatigue. And in order to realize the strength gains that you've made in the last 4 or 5 weeks, you have to be able to pull back a little bit so that your body can come back after that 4th or 5th or 6th week and do a heavier week again.
And
you're not
going
to be able to all gas, no brakes.
Yes, no. We need some breaks. And this is kind of the built, not burnt mentality, right? It's we are building and building and building. But if you just do one really hard session and then burn yourself out, you're ruining the rest of the week.
Right.
So I think RPE, and if you're listening to this and you don't record your rate of perceived exertion, or kind of how hard a set was, that is such valuable information, because at 50 pounds, this week when I'm on my period feels really freaking heavy, but I did it. And then next week I'm ovulating, I'm feeling amazing.
Yes.
And that 50 pounds feels like nothing. And I go up to 60. I'm like, oh, I progressively overloaded with weight. But there's also an RPE variable here that especially as women, especially people who've been training a long time, those details matter.
Yeah, it accommodates for normal fluctuations in your human behavior. Sometimes you're going to have a shitty night of sleep. Sometimes you're going to have a period and you're going to feel a little groggy, but instead of skipping the gym, maybe you just follow the RPE. So what that means is you wake up tired, you got your period, you're still going to go to the gym, but that now RPE 7 is probably going to be a lighter weight just because things might feel harder on that day.
Totally. So number 4, so far we've got increase weight, increase reps or sets, increase your RPE. Number 4 is you can improve your form and your range of motion. So an example of this is, you do your week 1 back squats and I give you some form review and I say, hey, is it possible for you to get a little bit lower? Or is it possible for you to, adjust your torso angle in this position? If a client understands and makes that change, that next week, that's progressive overload because you're doing the movement better and achieving a better result in that way.
No
and more
sets
range of
or
motion.
weight was changed. You just had them get a little deeper, new range of motion. That's another form of adaptation.
Absolutely.
Or
like if 1 week you didn't use lifting straps and you should have been, and then you do use them, your weight's going to go up.
Right.
That's a progressive overload, but it's really because you use the straps.
And you don't have to rely on your weakest link, which is probably your grip strength.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So number 5, reduce rest time. So over time, as you get more and more adapted to more volume, we have to challenge your ability. You have to challenge what your base level ability of volume is.
Your work capacity.
Great, that's the word. So over time, maybe in the first 3 weeks of your cycle, everything's the same. 3 sets. Week 4, I'm saying 4 sets. And I'm like, you better hold on to that same weight, same reps, same everything as your first 3 sets.
You know what's so funny is my clients literally lose their mind when I make them do 4 sets instead of 3. I'm like, okay, so you had to give an extra 5 minutes on this exercise? They lose their mind. They're like, why 4? Why 4? I thought we were doing 3. I'm like, well.
And I bet you what, that 4th set is probably their best set.
Yeah, last set, best set.
Sometimes it takes a set or 2, especially for me, especially early in the morning, like you train your clients. Sometimes I need an extra set or 2 to just like get my brain woken up, to like feel that
You got to get the creaks out. You got to shake the dust off.
Yeah. So maybe like, we'll just say this, like the first lift of most sessions, I'm going to like really go in all in on my warm up. Like I'm probably taking 3 or 4 warm up sets.
For sure.
All right. The last one, increase time under tension. I am super passionate about this. Anyone who's listening, I came from Functional Bodybuilding, which is the first coaching company I came from. And time under tension, TUT, was like one of the biggest things that we brought into
Start calling
our
King
coaching.
Tut.
The King Tut progressive overload option. Because as we get older, what's like the number one complaint we hear? My back hurts, my joint hurts. Yeah, your joints hurt because you're doing super quick dynamic reps on
all
muscles
the time.
and joints that aren't quite warmed up yet. So in one way that I encourage my clients to train is being aware of the time and tension they're putting on their muscles, but also the quality of that tension. Because your body only really knows the mechanical tension, the stress that you're putting on those fibers. Mm-hmm. Your brain doesn't even know that. It just knows how hard that brain has to work to, perform the lift or whatever. So the reason why I give clients a lot of tempo prescriptions, because I want them to slow down in certain areas, to focus on the stretch of the hamstrings in an RDL, to focus on the squeeze of the scap in a lat pull down.
And how many people do we know that ego lift, right? Like
half
prescribing
reps.
that time under tension forces you to check your ego at the door. I like to go back to the lateral raise example here because you're stuck at 8 pounds for the last 2 years. How do you go up? Maybe increasing time under tension or adding pauses or slowing down your lowering. Those are all strategies to increase progressive overload and adapt the exercise over time.
Yeah. I think this is anyone listening, this is a massive learning. If you're someone who's like, I just hate going to the gym. This is why. Because you don't understand the intention of what you're trying to accomplish, the goal you're trying to create inside the gym with each set, with each rep.
Set a goal.
Or you haven't set a goal. Maybe you're in a big transition in life and you're like, I'm barely surviving day to day. I can't even think. And you know what? If you're in that season, that is okay. Just lift as best as you can and move as well as you can.
Still show up, but try to define what your goal is. And I think a lot of people get stuck on I just want to lose weight. What does that mean?
Right.
How does that translate into actions and behaviors? We can't control outcomes. We can only control actions and behaviors. So if you want to lose weight, let's break that down. What does that mean? Oh, you want a smaller waist and a thicker booty? Who doesn't? Okay, we're going to do legs a couple times a week. You're going to add some core in there, maybe some cardio. That's defining the actions that you need in order to get to that goal.
I think it's really important that we highlight the fact that, one, you're not going to always feel super motivated every day, but two, the days that you're not feeling super motivated, you probably have some motivation in there. You just got to dust the rust off. And having a structured program with a structured and aligned intent, and aligned means like Kelsey as my coach knows what my intent is. I know what my intent is. When I do the intention and actually make it happen, we get to celebrate about it. There's a whole reward system that happens when you use progressive overload. And I think that, again, back to the person who goes to the gym, kind of looks around, like, oh, they're doing some of that. Maybe I should do some of that. You are the person who needs to follow something. You choose your 8 favorite movements and progressively overload them for the next 6 to 12 weeks until you stop seeing progress in one of these 6 ways. And then maybe we switch up the movement. And it's really that simple.
Yeah.
So how progressive overload actually enhances consistency is exactly this. It gives your training structure. It gives you purpose, because training feels less random when there's a clear goal.
And I think we also both focus on performance outcomes. Like, we encourage our clients to set performance-based goals. And what that means is focus on the things that you can do, right? I touched on the actions and behaviors. So what are the actions and behaviors that are defining your outcomes? You want a bigger booty? Okay, so that action is going to be hip thrust. All right, let's set a goal on that. You want to hip thrust your body weight? Cool, that's a goal. You want to hip thrust 200 pounds? Great, that's a goal. You want a Bulgarian split squat with 75 pounds in your hands? Great, let's make it happen. Setting those realistic performance, tangible goals help you not only stay consistent, but ultimately reach the aesthetic goals that you're chasing.
And it's a lot more fun.
It's a lot
more fun to be like, ooh, Kelsey, I'm gonna go to the gym today, and my goal is to hip thrust 400 pounds. I don't even know if I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna do it. That's way more fun to talk about than like, hey Kelsey, I'm gonna go to the gym so I look skinny.
Yeah, no one wants to hear that.
Hey Kelsey, I'm going to the gym because I want a big butt. No one ever says stuff like that.
I want a thigh gap. I'm so glad we're not doing that anymore.
No, we're not saying, hey Kelsey, I can't wait to admit the thing that I'm so insecure about. No, I say, I'm going to the gym and I'm going to lift these heavy weights. I know exactly what I'm going to do. Do you want to come train with me?
Yep.
That's way more fun to talk about.
Yep. So the small wins are long-term success. So even if the weight stays the same, movements might feel easier, smoother, whatever that looks like. And then also having some progressive overload helps you avoid the burnout. So more isn't always better. Sometimes progress means executing the same workout more efficiently rather than constantly changing it. So both you and my clients know that they're probably going to be doing similar exercises over a given amount of time. We call those blocks. So it might be 4 weeks. Some people stay on the same program. Like, I do my programming sometimes I'll run it for like 8 weeks, sometimes 10, depending on my boredom of the exercises. And if I get bored with an exercise, I just do something similar, do a variety of the same different move. But if an exercise is improving and you're constantly like progressing in some way, there's not really any need to change it.
I think that's a great point. Is like, I'll be halfway through a cycle and kind of feel mentally burnt out on a movement.
Yes.
If you don't have a coach or like someone to be like, what do I do? You're probably going to, fall off, right? You're like, I'm just dreading that hip thrust session.
Yes.
But instead, I'd be like, okay, you don't like hip thrust? Great. Let's just do single leg glute bridges with the dumbbell today. Or let's do 45-degree back hip extensions instead.
Yeah. Maybe you're sick of setting up a barbell, and so you use a Smith machine instead.
Exactly.
Boom.
And there actually is research that shows that following a more structured plan with progressive overload principles actually helped the participants maintain motivation and adherence better than those who had no structured training and were just kind of like going through the motions. So we're saying this from personal experience of coaching thousands of clients, but also the research shows when you have something to focus on, it limits the noise of other things. So if you feel like you're someone who's kind of going through the motions in the gym, this is your sign to start tracking your lifts, start tracking your numbers, and actually start making progress from a performance lens, not just like, I want to run faster on the field. Like, those performance focuses are great,
But define that.
But defining your performance focuses in the gym that will make you run faster outside or will make you have a bigger butt and a smaller waist.
Totally. So bringing this all together and figuring out how to apply progressive overload, we're going to touch on how to design a smart training session. We're going to use an example of a glute day, just as an example. This can be applied to a shoulder workout, a back workout, we're trying to condense years and years of exercise science into this 5-10 minute segment in this episode. So
and
just bear with it.
If you have not seen Kelsey's butt, if you have not seen it yet, it is time, because I literally had somebody in my life ask me if she had a fake butt, because it is so perfectly like plumped and well proportioned to her body.
I'm honestly flattered.
I have a crush on your butt.
I'm flattered that anyone would think that I have a fake butt, which just tells me I've been working hard enough. Because, you're your own biggest critic, right? Like, you look at yourself in the mirror and in a video, and you're like, oh, I really wish it was bigger. Or I wish that my arms were skinnier. Whatever. You're your own biggest critic.
Photoshopped my butt in photos to look like yours.
That's so funny. Maybe we should superimpose my butt on your butt just to see what it looks like.
Yeah, I'm gonna dig up those 17 photos that I was doing.
I will say
we should compare.
That I think my butt has gotten bigger just this year in 2025 because of Bulgarian split squats.
Well, why don't you walk us through that training program that we all desperately want, so that I can turn my long back.
So you can hack your programs and no longer have a long back like Brie. So first, you always want to start with a compound movement. So this is going to be something like a squat, a deadlift, something that's going to target multiple muscles and build strength. So this is where your lower rep range sets might be. So this could be something like a deadlift. You're doing a 3x5 at something at RPE 7 or 8. So something that is challenging. You're kind of getting the neurological stimulus from a really heavy lift. And then you're going to move into a secondary movement like a hip thrust, which has a lot of isolated glute activation, but you can still load it heavy, and it's also kind of supporting that other primary move. So think of that as your meat and potatoes. So your main thing is going to be your deadlift in this example. That's going to be your steak. Then you're going to have your potatoes, which might be your hip thrust or an RDL even, so you get a little more hamstring in there. And then you're going to want some other form of isolation work, because you're not going to want to go heavy all the time. You don't want to go ham on everything. So your isolation work might be something like a kickback, which is going to isolate more of the outside glute, abductions to fine tune any target or specific weaknesses. And then the third aspect of a good program is going to be making sure that you're working different planes of movements and kind of avoiding that redundancy. So if we think about your planes of movement, right? You have a forward or frontal plane of movement. Think about a hip thrust. You're moving in a very front plane of movement. So you're going to have flexion, extension, and then we also want to have some sort of lateral move. So that's where an abduction might come in. So if you think about the seated bad girl machine, that's your abductions. So you're working laterally, side to side. So that could be things like banded lateral walks or clamshells. And then you also want to have, the hips are responsible for internal rotation, external rotation, and those are kind of minor players, but you just want to have all aspects of how your, in this case, glutes and hips and quads and hamstrings move as a part of a good program. So if we think about what it means to be redundant, I think of the example of, okay, if you're looking at a program and you want to figure out if it's good or not, let's say a program has hip thrusts, forward lunges, Bulgarian split squats, and RDLs, and that was it. You might think on its face, or someone who doesn't have a trained eye, okay, that seems like a reasonable program, but you don't really have any lateral movement, so you might just start to accumulate some imbalances, or you may not be having a well-rounded physique that you could.
Right, and your glutes are made up of 3 primary muscles, so your glutes are an entire muscle group. And they have 3 primary muscles. So the maximus, which she's talking about, is the big meaty part, and that's what the hip thrust does. So of course we want to prioritize that.
And lunges and Bulgarian split squats.
Yes. And then, of course, we have, and the glute medius is largely stretched with the split squats too. And so we want to add those in. And then we have the glute minimus, which is also best for like, top-down RDLs and things where you're like lengthening the hamstrings a little bit more. So RDLs, single leg RDLs, things like that. And so when Kelsey's talking through developing, what would be like the best glute program is we have to honor each part of the muscle of the glutes, but we also have to look at
their role.
And their role, but also lengthened ranges and shortened ranges. Mm-hmm. So we have to make sure that we're challenging the right rep scheme and the right resistance profile with the right movement. So if you were to summarize all of this, are those 3 movements enough?
Which ones?
The ones you just laid out. Hip thrust, RDL, and split squat. It may look like it's pretty short on paper, but is that an effective glute specific leg day?
I wouldn't think so, because you'd want some, like we just talked about, lateral movement. You want some smaller isolation players, like maybe instead of split squats in that 3 exercise workout, you add curtsy squats or Cossack squats or a lateral lunge, just so you can get some variety of movement. That doesn't mean that you can't do the other things on a different day, but try to have some different planes of movement. In your workout. And
that also is just from a longevity perspective. If you're only moving in one plane, your hips are a 360 joint. They're a ball and socket joint. And so are your shoulders. But if you don't move and express strength in each range that your hip can, that's where we get into overuse injuries. That's where we get into, like the pinchy hip flexor and the pinchy low back kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I love that you called that out.
You can kind of give yourself some imbalances there. And then you might be like, oh, why do my hips feel tight? Well, maybe we need to look at your program. Maybe you're going too heavy. Maybe you don't have enough lateral movement. Maybe you don't have enough thoracic rotation in your whole program. So it's helpful to look at your entire build of the program, making sure you're including all types of exercises that emphasize different planes of movement, different isolation of exercises.
And if you're super confused by all of this,
welcome to the club.
Welcome to the club. And we are creating solutions for that. Kelsey has programs. I have a program I'm writing. So if you are looking for a trusted source to help you with your goals, you can absolutely reach out to us and we can help you with that. Yeah. I think the other most important thing is that if you're somebody who's like, just do it for me, I don't want to think about it all. Yep, we got you.
Yeah, even as coaches, like we pay other coaches to train us too, because I always like make the comparison of a chef, right? Like they love cooking, they love the validation from other people and expressing their love, and that's how they share love, is cooking. But when they get home at the end of the day, they probably just don't want to cook anything for themselves. And training is pretty similar. Like if you have a full-time job as, let's say, an accountant or CPA, you probably don't have a lot of mental energy to give to programming for yourself, in which case you can reach out. You can find free programs online. You can reach out for a coach to have some extra accountability.
The intent is what matters.
Yes.
So as long, like, if you could follow whatever program that's like decently well written, but if you are following progressive overload principles, I could write you 1 week of programming that you just follow for 24 weeks and you can keep getting more jacked and more toned and feel better in your body with the same exact movement, but it's about the intent.
And it's all practice too. Like you can't just pick up, your newfound hobby of lifting and expect to get it right in the first try. Like even as someone who I got my undergrad in exercise science, I've had multiple training certifications. I didn't really ever feel like I knew what the fuck I was talking about until the last couple years. So 12 years later, where I was like, actually, I do know what I'm talking about. But I knew what I was talking about for a long time, but you didn't really ever feel confident until recently.
And you have that sounding board. Because again, all of the social media stuff, we think they're trusted social media influencers. We think these people know what they're talking about because they have good marketing. But sometimes you just need a sounding board. Like you know what to do.
And the reality is it doesn't have to be that complicated. No. Find a couple moves that you want to do within a variety of different planes and just get really good at those things. So, and remember, muscle growth takes months, if not years, to show. So if you want to feel stronger and you don't see changes yet, stay the course, stick to the progressive overload principles, and ultimately you will see results.
Yeah. And you can look at your intensity in the training. Like we were saying, if it's only 4 movements in your program and that doesn't seem like a lot, you're just not lifting heavy enough. And we'll get into that topic another time as well.
My 30-minute workout last week was harder probably than many of the hour-long workouts I've ever done.
Oh my God, I can't wait to talk about why that's so... Everybody's like, oh, I can't possibly get in enough training to make a difference in 30 minutes. Are you kidding me? When I have 2 hours, that's when I make the least impact because I'm just fucking around.
Because you're going heavy, but you're also trying not to rest because you're trying to be efficient. It felt like CrossFit.
Yeah.
It felt like CrossFit. Anyway, we digress. So final takeaways. Progressive overload is essential, but it's not extreme. So progress is not just about lifting heavier. So
you can still honor your body.
Right. If you think about the person that comes into the gym and just like 1 rep maxes every session, is probably not going to equate to actual strength gains. You're probably going to be stuck and ultimately feeling that plateau.
That plateau typically comes when you get in your own way. You know what I mean? So I think smart programming ensures that the muscles that we're trying to bias are, worked effectively without overuse, but then you bring in your intent and your commitment to the concept of progressive overload with each session.
Yep. And then above all, consistency over novelty. So stick to the plan, make small changes if you get bored. Like we talked about, switching barbell hip thrust to Smith machine hip thrust or a similar machine, and trust the process.
And if you actually want to look like you train as hard as you do, train with a plan, train with intent, and accountability and support goes a long way.
It does. Yep. And the plan needs progressive overload, which has been the topic for the last 30 or so minutes. So we will see you next time in the next episode.
And if you have any questions or any follow-ups, there is a comment section in Spotify. So if you want to ask us questions, we'd be happy to answer some of your questions and keep the conversation going.
Give us content for future episodes.
Until next time in the next episode.